Board go through all cases set for public hearing today. This particular agenda. This is the business that should have occurred in October. We did not have a quorum in that meeting. And so those cases that were heard, that should have been heard in October, have been moved to the front of today's agenda. So the cases, the dockets are located over here on the far side of the room where that gentleman's standing. But we'll go through the cases that were originally set for October, deal with those cases, and then we will list new cases. And you'll see on the agenda, it talks about BZA old business or BZA new business. The new business will be cases who were scheduled originally to be at today's hearing. The cases listed under old business are cases that would have been heard on October 17th. So the board does have a consent agenda, and the consent agenda is a list of cases that the chairman reviews the record in each case, and if they feel that the applicant has met the criteria necessary to obtain a variance, and they don't feel that testimony would alter the material facts in the case, Mr. Pepper recommends these cases for consent. I'll go ahead and call all the cases today, both the October 17th and November 7th cases that are recommended for consent. Again, these cases that I call them, if you're here in opposition and only opposition to the case or have question, please raise your hand. If it's just a question, I'll be happy to discuss it with you prior to the board voting on that case. But if you are opposed to the case that I'm going to call for consent, raise your hand, please. We'll hear its case as it's listed on the agenda today. So I'll enter into those cases now recommended for consent. The first case would be on page 2, the middle of page 2, case 2024-228. This would have been on the October 17th agenda. Ms. Rachel Williamson requested an item D appeal to change the legally non-conforming structure in R6. Ms. Williamson was requesting to enclose a front porch and an exterior staircase in the Old Hickory area. Are there any parties here opposed case 228 at 900 Berry Street in Old Hickory? Okay, Mr. Chairman, seeing none. That case has been recommended for consent agenda. The next case recommended for the consent agenda is on page 3. Case 2024-231. It's listed under new business, so that would be November 7th cases. Mr. Jeffrey Scoville, the appellant owner of the property at 813 Leland Court, requesting a variance in rear setback in RS10. Are there any parties here opposed to the case at 813 Leland Court? Okay, Mr. Chairman, I see no hands. Next case recommended for consent is the case on the bottom of page 3, case 2024-232, Ms. Karen Klassen, 808 North Star Court, requesting a variance in the rear setbacks in R15. Are there any parties present opposed to case 232? Mr. Chairman, seeing none. Next case recommended for consent will be case 2 on page 4, case 2024-233 Chase Vestal, appellant owner of property at 405 Parker Court, requesting a variance in the rear setback in RS10. Are there any parties in opposition to the request on Parker Court? Mr. Chairman, seeing none. Next case, case 2024-234, Stellan Yon Builders, the appellant, and Ryan and Gabrielle Elise Pryor, owners of the property at 706 Maplewood Lane, requesting a variance in the side setback in RS15. Are there any parties opposed to the case 234 on Maplewood Lane? Mr. Chairman, I see none. Next case for consent, case 2024-235. The Hensley Group is the appellant, owners in common at Harrington Avenue, requesting a variance from the driveway width provisions in OR 20 at 141 Harrington Avenue in Madison. Are there any parties opposed to case 235 in Madison on Harrington Avenue? Mr. Chairman, seeing none. Okay, our next case recommended for consent is on page 5, case 2024-237 Metro General Services, the appellant owner of the property at 1354 Brick Church Pike, requesting a variance from the street setbacks in OR 20. Are there any parties in opposition to the case 237 on Brick Church Pike? Okay, Mr. Chairman, seeing none. And the final case recommended for consent, and I will go back and recap these cases. Case 2024-240, Frank Turner Kurzwig at 3727 Nevada Avenue, requesting a variance in side street setback in RS5. Are there any parties opposed to the case at 3727 Nevada Avenue? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Chairman, you're again just recapping your consent agenda. Items recommended for consent: case 228, case 231 on Leland Court, case 232 on North Star Court, case 233 on Parker Court, case 234 on Maplewood Lane, case 235 in Harrington Avenue, case 237 Brick Church Pike, and case 240 in Nevada Avenue. That is your consent agenda.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
A second.
Second, there's a motion, a second, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, those go on the consent agenda.
Okay, if you are here, what that means is if you are here for these cases, and I'll call them again, if you're here for any of the cases I call now, you're free to go. Your cases have been approved by the board. Please follow up with the codes department beginning next week. Case 228, 900 Berry Street, case 231, 813 Leland Court, 232, 808 North Star Court, 405 Parker Court, case 233, case 234, 706 Maplewood Lane, case 235 Harrington Avenue, case 237 Brick Church Pike, and case 240 Nevada Avenue. All right, if you're here for any of those cases I just called, your cases have been approved. I will extend the invitation that will be summarily rejected by all parties to stay with us for the entirety of the day and watch the rest of the cases. And as usual, no one stays. All right. But hey, I can never be accused of not inviting you to our party. All right. So the first case that will be heard in public hearing today would have been the first case on October 17th, and that'll be case 2024-225. Mr. Paul Simiu is the appellant. Laurent Champenois is the owner of the property at 1532 Neely's Bend Road, requesting a special exception from the adaptive residential requirements in CN. The appellant is seeking to construct 2 single-family residences on the property, referred to the board under 1716-030F. I know there is opposition to this case, so I will reset the clock over there to 10 minutes, and I'm going to go through the presentation first. And after I'm done, as we talked about earlier, the applicant will come first and speak, along with any parties in support of his or her case. And then after that, we'll hear from opposition. And I spoke with the council members. The council member would like to go after rebuttal by the appellant before we close the public hearing. Okay. Back up. The case 225 on Neely's Bend Pike. Subject property is the red parcel, which you see here is zoned commercial neighborhood. This CN property is a commercial zoning in the Neely's Bend area. There used to be at some point in the past an old market and gas station that occupied this space or these adjoining properties long ago. Since then, the property stayed commercial, but houses have been constructed on the lot there. And so the variance request for this gentleman is twofold. Special exception request, excuse me. One is to be allowed to build a 2-family residence instead of multifamily. Mr. Simiu's request actually falls under a prior version of the adaptive residential ordinance. So that is what this case is proceeding under, not the current ordinance that was passed by the council a few weeks back. It did alter some of the provisions in the adaptive residential code. In this case, doesn't have effect on this case, but twofold. One is the adaptive residential and commercial districts require that you build a multifamily construction or greater, so that's 3 units or more. This gentleman is wishing to build only 2, which we consider a duplex. And then additionally, that we look at the base zoning for all the bulk regulations and setbacks. And I did not update my slide, so I apologize to that. I'll correct that. But the CN zone district has a maximum height allowed of 20 feet. And this gentleman, I believe, is looking at 34 to 35 feet on his drawing. So I'll update that slide. I apologize. This is looking at the subject property. Again, I went out there on September 16th. That's how long ago this has been. But looking at the subject property on Neely's Bend. And this is a view of Neely's Bend looking both in the upper left to the south and then to the north. Members, to give you, if you've been out to this area, the bottom right photograph looking north, if you go back up a mile and a half or two, you'll run into Neely's Bend Elementary and Neely's Bend Middle School up that way. To the south would be the park where Neely's Bend terminates down there at the river. I'll leave this photograph up. If the applicant wishes to come forward at this time, on any parties in support. And whoever wishes to address the board, if you would please, when you come up, and this will be a reminder for all speakers, give your name and address where you live, and then present your testimony. With that, the clock will start once these gentlemen are done introducing themselves.
Here. Hear me now? My name is Philip Marchetta. I'm a developer on this property.
We need your address for the record, please, sir.
Sorry?
Your address, we need that for the record.
My address is 1115 57th Avenue North in Nashville, Tennessee, 37209. And like Mr. Hargis already presented, we're seeking an exception to actually reduce the density that is allowed per the code to just construct 2 single-family homes instead of proposed multifamily, which would mean 3 or more dwellings on that parcel. Because we believe 2 single-family homes would be more in line with what's already in the Bend. Multifamily would not be. It's not something we would want to develop, and that's why we're seeking for that exception.
And is the height you're requesting, the plans I've received, I could not read the height. It was too small. Is it 34 to 35 feet, as Mr. Hargis said?
34 feet, I believe, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Paul Simu. I live at 3020A Richmond Hill Drive here in Nashville, Tennessee. I wanted to ask Ms. Christie if she had the house. Yeah, so those are the house plans that we're wanting to build there on that parcel. It's about 2,600 square feet, 2 stories, brick and siding, with 1 shared driveway down the middle because NDOT only allows 1 curb cut on a major or arterial street. If it has less than, I believe, 125 feet of road frontage. So, like we said, we are looking to do 2 houses here instead of the multifamily that is required here per this base zoning, which is 3 or more units up to whatever you can do within the legalities. And I've gotten this variance before in other areas. I think last one it was due to a stormwater issue, so I wanted to lower the density. Before that, it was due to the lot being undersized. Here I'm asking for it because we feel like 2 houses fits the neighborhood better. It is T2 rural maintenance, so they don't necessarily want too much density. I think I really do believe that 2 houses would be more appropriate here than doing something 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, whatever that may be. So if you can see the house plans, we're trying to do something that isn't super modern. It's like modern transitional. It's 2 stories, has a 2-car garage. It wouldn't be Airbnb. It wouldn't be a rental. It would be 2 single family occupants in each dwelling. And we believe that the area here, it's really desirable. So we think that would be something that would be well received.
Good afternoon. My name is Reed Estes. I live at 3110 Forest Park Avenue here in Nashville. And for many, many years, I lived in Neely's Bend. I love Neely's Bend, and I love all these people back here that are about to get up and speak against this project. But I'm here to speak on behalf of these gentlemen. I've represented them for several projects. They build quality homes. They are sensitive to the neighborhood. They're sensitive to Neely's Bend. They could build 8 townhomes, and they don't want to go in and just grab profit and build something that's incompatible with the neighborhood. They've always been that way. And so they want to build 2 homes. Just down the street at the corner of Hudson Road and Neely's Bend, there are 2 homes that are about the same price and maybe square footage. I'm not sure about that. But it was zoned for single family, and they increased the density to 2 homes, just like these gentlemen want to build. And so I think it would be incompatible with what happened there. And here we're trying to decrease the density. They increased the density for 2 homes. So we want to increase the density for 2 homes, and think it would be incompatible with what happened there and what these guys want to do, and unfair. Secondly, these homes will increase the property prices down in the Bend. As my friends back here know you're going to hear from, there are many homes that are not kept up and they're overgrown. One right next to this property is Irby Peeler's old place. He had a store there. And right now, if the concern is density, there are any number of Hispanics living there and all kinds of cars there, and the house is run down. I think this property will do nothing more. Hopefully it will initiate a sale of that property so someone can build a nice family home, and as these gentlemen want to do. But I've looked at the plans. They build quality homes, and they want to build 2 nice homes for families, and we think that it should be approved.
Thank you. Any questions?
I don't have a question. I was just wondering if we can see the photos again of the area. Thank you.
So y'all will have, we'll hear from the opposition. Y'all have 5 minutes and 26 seconds left to speak in rebuttal.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, this time we'll hear from those parties opposed to the case. If you'd like to, please come forward and identify yourselves and make your presentation. Mr. Tallman, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Almost didn't recognize you with that beard, sir.
I'm in disguise. We're trying to manage our time. I apologize. So, are you ready?
Ready for it?
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is Jason Holloman. I'm an attorney here in Nashville, here on behalf of the adjacent property owners. And I apologize. I'll dive right in for limited time. Earlier, Mr. Hargis said, I'm not sure I understood, that this was proceeding under the old ordinance. If this is filed under the ordinance before the July amendment to the zoning code, at that time, this was beyond your authority to grant. This type of allowance in a CN zone category, there were conditions where it could be permitted with conditions. But I think all parties are in agreement that those conditions that are identified for permitted with conditions, this proposal does not meet. So under the old ordinance, there was no opportunity to then essentially go to this body and seek a special exception permit. Just in July, they did make an amendment, BL 2024-187, to create an opportunity for this applicant to come on a special exception to try to seek your permission. But if this is proceeding under the old ordinance, then it would not be allowed at all.
Hold on a second. I think you need to start the clock.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. However, even under the new ordinance, the opportunity for special exception in this context is pretty limited. It identifies that you still have to follow all of the general guidelines for allowance of a special exception under 1716-150. And I want to take just an opportunity to point out a few aspects of that provision of the code. First of all, under subparagraph A, it is the applicant's burden of proof to demonstrate to you that this proposed development would be compatible with adjacent property owners. And I understand at a sort of a 50,000-foot look, you can say this is CN zone property and they want to do residential. There is primarily residential adjacent, and so that could be considered compatible. But there is a pretty specific formula for what compatibility means under subparagraph C, which is integrity to adjacent areas, and subparagraph D, which is architectural compatibility. And one of the key concerns that these neighbors have is, and what the application says and what the planning staff report says, is a 40-foot height limitation. So I guess I'd like some clarity from the applicant on whether it really is 30, 35, or as is reflected, 40. 40 is simply out of context with all of the built environment around this property. Most of these are 1 to 1.5 story houses. And so right now, the CN, if it's built out, is going to have a height that is contextually compatible with what's there. If these are built out at 40 feet or even 35 feet, that's going to be significantly out of character in terms of the bulk and the height of the context. So for that reason, I would ask that you deny this today. You know, there is a pathway. There are actually two pathways that this applicant could accomplish what they want to. The most straightforward one is to simply do as the applicant referenced and rezone this property. You know, there is a process for rezoning where this would go residential. Then those community concerns, the level of detail, the type of architecture of that building, all could be fleshed out by the district council person. That is what they do all of the time, and that is really what's appropriate here. But at a minimum, there shouldn't be allowances for a 40-foot height and such a large-scale development that is completely inconsistent. And I will just close by saying, I want to reiterate, this is their burden of proof to demonstrate compatibility. They didn't show you any elevations. They didn't show you any building materials. They didn't show you any proposed structure and talk about that to demonstrate that they have met that burden of compatibility. And where that has not been done, I think you have an obligation to deny this request as it is, and frankly, send them back to the drawing board to have more conversation with the community. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to some of the neighbors.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Stewart. I live at 1509 Neely's Bend Road, and I also own the empty lot next to us. We have a very rural neighborhood. Most of our homes are on RS 40 minimum lots. We have children that walk to school, no sidewalks. It's a busy road already. Bringing in multifamily homes will make that worse. And there's not really a spot. I mean, if you're going to put a home on it, make it one home. That's already out of characteristic with the neighborhood. We also have wildlife that is being uprooted by development. And as a result, they're becoming destructive. But that's a Tennessee state law issue. And we also have concerns about the gas tank that exists underneath that property.
Hi there, my name is Jesse Strauss. I'm at 1627 Pawnee Trail. It's one of the off-roads of Hudson. And I just have a few points. One is, I think the developers have stated that they're going to be lowering the density through this appeal and to the new legislation that was passed in July, allowing multifamily on CN. That's true to a degree, but it's really an illusion. As he said, we are in T2 rural maintenance. 2 years ago, working with our council member, we downzoned several, I think it was 800 or so total acres down in this area, downzoned it to RS 80. So one single family home per 80,000 square feet. Many others are RS 40. The fact that we have a half-acre lot here that is zoned CN is somewhat of an anomaly, and this legislation this summer caught us by surprise. But I just want to point to the work that we did with our council member to as evidence of, a huge portion of the neighborhood, what we desire in the area based on what existed back then and what still exists today. And I also wanted to point out that the National Next Growth and Preservation Map has this area in the Green Network. The Green Network is one of the most protected areas in the county, second only to open space anchor, which is given to public parks. And so again, to think that this area, which there are very few of, there's some up in Whites Creek, I think, and down here in Neely's Bend, there's also in Bell's Bend. These are all extremely rural areas of Davidson County. They're very special. I think that Nashville is diverse and that we have Germantown, we have North Nashville, we have the Nolensville Pike Corridor, we have parts of East Nashville. These are all very unique neighborhoods, and I think that each of the unique appeal of those neighborhoods needs to be preserved in the same way that the unique appeal of our rural area, which is still in the county, needs to be preserved. So I would just say, while they're making a case that they are lowering the density, if you look at the existing homes in the area, many of them on single-family homes on 1.5+ acre lots, it's really just not inaccurate. And based on the changes in our need for housing, there's a lot of fast legislation that's passed at council. And we acted quickly, right? This was in July, and very suddenly we had a development that was proposed. And I think just looking at the amount of people here today who are speaking against it and the amount of emails we received, you can see how quickly we tried to act with the speed that this new legislation is coming in. But I'll rest and pass it to our former council member. But just want to say that please really think about the ways that our current character have been impacted by the fast legislation that is passing.
Before Mr. Forkham speaks, Mr. Holman pointed out, and I stated wrongly at the beginning, that bill did pass in July, which allowed adaptive residential and CN. I had my timeline off in my notes. I pulled up the bill to double check that. Mr. Simu filed in August, and that bill passed at the end of July. It did make some changes to the text, and I guess what I was trying to say is that the overall text of the adaptive residential section of the zoning code, if you go to the Muni Code site, it still reads the old way. The new text that Council Bill 2024-187 has not been updated. And that's actually what I was talking about, is how I was judging this case was under the prior text, not the new bill, but to the applicability of the design standards in there may have changed, but I wanted to correct that for the record. So the council bill did happen before, which allowed it in CN, so we would operate under the council bill. I know, members, you guys look at Muni Code as your copy of the zoning code, so sometimes it's not necessarily the most up-to-date version of it.
My name is Jim Forkham, 542 Manice Lane in Madison, Tennessee, just down the road from this structure. And I was Metro Councilman for 8 years in this district. I also served on the Metro Historical Commission. Even sit on some historic zoning as a backup. So I appreciate the job that y'all do in the regular zoning. And anyway, I also served on the Greenways Commission as a council member then. When I was no longer a council member, I was on the Greenways board for a while. So I say this to say that this area is special to me, as it is these people here tonight from Neely's Bend. It's a special place. There's no other structures in this neighborhood that the density is that great. Two houses on a half an acre. The height, we went out and looked at the height of our house just to compare, and it's amazing. It would tower over most of the houses in Neely's Bend if they were placed side by side. Big lots too. We have a lot of acre to 20 acre parcels of land with houses on them, and certainly land use is a lot better up there too. I've always supported conservation and preservation here in Nashville, and I think along with the wildlife that Kat mentioned there, It's just a special place, and certainly I think, as a councilman, I tried to keep zoning issues that preserved what we had, because everybody that lives there knows it's a special place. And I thank you for your time.
If I could just close to follow up on what Mr. Hargis said. So to be clear, the law changed in July. You would not have been able to have even heard this request before then. But now you can consider this as a special exception permit if they don't meet the standards for permitted with conditions. Unquestionably, they do not. And if they are going to be considered as a special exception under 1716-150, all of those contextual analysis questions, those then apply. They definitely apply. And under subparagraph A, it is the applicant's burden to demonstrate to you both that the site itself is contextually compatible and the architecture of the built structures are going to be contextually compatible. We would argue that neither is the case. As you heard, most of this area was downzoned to RS40. That is 1 unit per 40,000 square feet. This would be 2 units, much smaller area, and the height that they're requesting, in fact, is beyond, it's an exception on top of the exception to allow the 40 feet, and that is very inconsistent, and we've seen nothing to demonstrate any contextual compatibility from the applicant. Thank you.
So, Mr. Holloman, before you sit down, let me ask you, if we approve it, I can assure you they're going to be limited to the 34 feet that they've said they have, or that they said they're building to, and I think that is in their plans. So looking at the general provisions, here's what, and the special exception, I understand they have the burden, but
Sure.
If the conditions exist, our hands are tied. It's not, we have to grant the special exception. So and you pointed to 1716-150C, which is the integrity of adjacent areas, and here's what I'm struggling with.
Sure.
Because I understand this might be a different type structure, but the way I read that provision is it essentially relates to there has to be some effect on the neighboring properties' reasonable long-term use of their properties. So that's what I'm struggling with.
Well, if you look at D,
I understand this is
sure.
this is going to be out of place according to you in terms of the height, but how is it affecting the
Look at paragraph D.
reasonable long-term use?
The next one, paragraph D, is architectural compatibility, and it specifically calls out compatible height. That's a specific requirement. And I would tell you that these are 20 feet high is a consistent compatibility. So I think there are two questions. Do you allow the 2 units that are at a higher density than the surrounding area? Essentially, we're avoiding a rezoning that most likely would be limited to 1 unit on a lot that size, and this is allowing them to get that. But the other issue is the allowable height, and 20 feet, which is what's allowed under their zone category right now, is consistent with the context. And that is something under subparagraph D that you specifically can and I think should consider.
Well, one question I had, the property is zone CN. It's not an RS zone property. And so
Correct.
where I guess a lot of the arguments I'm hearing are a desire to reduce the density and push this down to a single family home on this property. But as it stands right now, this is not it. The property owner would have rights based upon this structure as a CN.
And these folks recognize that, and they accept that. And I think the height is a big issue. And in short, if they want to build out, they could actually build 3 units, but it would be a much smaller floor plate, and it would have a much smaller height limitation. So even though you're getting fewer units with this, you're getting a lot more house on a small lot.
You anticipated my next question, which is it sounds from sort of the statements that you made and that the sort of design, layout, structure, size, scope is the bigger concern here.
Absolutely.
Knowing full well what this is.
Absolutely. And I would tell you, you can deny this today and send them back to the community, and those things may be able to be worked out, but there's been very limited conversation or submission or evidence before you about what that's going to look like, and that lack of clarity is a big deal.
Is it okay if I add just one quick point? You said if the conditions do allow it, but the new legislation only allows a duplex if there's an existing building, and there's no existing building. It would have to be a multifamily proposal to be allowed by the conditions, but he's asking for an exception because the conditions do not allow.
So under D, and it does specifically mention height, what the requirement is that it shall not adversely impact, the height shall not adversely impact abutting properties. So your position is, or those located across the street frontages. So your position is that the properties that abut this property and across the street would be adversely impacted by the extra 13 feet in height?
Yeah, we regulate aesthetics all the time, and I think that the visual impact on those neighbors is an actionable item. I would also point out that, again, I know I've kind of harped on their burden, but this is a pretty significant build on a small lot, and there are concerns, although that hasn't been the highlight, about stormwater, and it's their burden to demonstrate that level of impervious surface on that small lot isn't going to adversely affect stormwater too. Maybe they can get there with the stormwater engineer, but they haven't demonstrated that to you.
Yeah, I don't think they have to. I mean, my understanding is they still have to clear stormwater.
They do, but there's...
I think to get the special exception from us, they're not required to prove that. But I think they have to get stormwater approval if they get the special exception.
I'm not sure about on
Do I understand that right?
single lot, though.
Yeah, I mean, the land use and the zoning part needs to be clear before you get into the technical aspects of designing.
I don't think stormwater's going to look at this until they figure out what.
Right, they're not reviewing it until.
Are they going to look at one that only has 2 units? They didn't used to.
They won't require a grading permit
Yeah.
for a 2-unit structure, but they will for a 3 or up. That's
They will for, sorry.
for 3 or more.
Okay, so then they won't consider a grading permit on this approval?
Not generally for a 2-family use.
Yeah,
They
see,
don't require
Ross,
a
they
grading
won't.
permit.
They won't review it.
Now, I think if there's disturbance of more than, I think it's 10,000 square feet, they can still require a grading permit. But stormwater will be, grading will be tracked on the building permit for them to.
Because it's a 2-unit less than 10,000 square feet, they're not going to review it. It's going to be,
Stormwater's not going to review this at all at any point?
They get tracked, and so they get tracked on the building permit. So we leave it to stormwater to decide whether they've got to review it or not review it.
Okay, so we just don't know whether they will review it or not.
I don't
When we
know.
pull the
Correct.
permit, we send it to them, and if they feel like they need to review it, they review it, and if they.
Right. Mr. Holland's testimony is great. 3 or more, they always do a grading permit, regardless whether it's.
so if this built out under the CN zoning, then they would. But under this proposal, they would not. And I mean, as everybody in this room is probably aware, stormwater is overwhelmed with projects. So the likelihood that they're going to pick up something that's not mandatory for them is unlikely.
Any more questions for the opposition?
Was there a community meeting that you all attended?
Multiple.
Yes, there was. I think this is a technical thing, but from what I understand, there was supposed to be a sign-in sheet that was submitted, and there was not a sign-in sheet that was submitted.
Okay, and just for my curiosity, what would you like to see on this vacant, overgrown lot?
So it's a half an acre, which is already unusually small. We're not trying to prevent development there. I think we just, if it is already small for the area, we think that the most that would be appropriate is a single-family home. And I believe everybody here would support that.
Yeah.
But it's zone commercial. Would you support a commercial use?
It would have to be the, I think, right kind of store. If there's we have quite a few CSA farms in the area. There's horse farms. If it was a, neighborhood market that fit that and that someone was willing to come in and build, yes.
Community center.
Yeah.
We'd love to have that.
I think the reality is it might be hard to find someone who would be willing to build that as opposed to something like a Dollar General. No, I don't think that that kind of store that's not really serving the community in the same way would be supported.
Yeah, I guess you can't really control what's built here to some extent. So, I guess I'd say you could do worse then these two structures, I mean, it seems to me like if it's, a lot of your concern is traffic and stormwater, I mean, you could have as much impervious space taken by, 3 townhomes. I think you can build even more than that.
No,
So
just
I-
three, just
Three,
three.
so-
And commercial neighborhood is, we hear the word commercial, but commercial neighborhood are essentially, you have them in your neighborhood, I have them in mine. It's the small grocery stores that used to exist, and that's what it's made to accommodate. I mean, it could be a commercial use, but it's a pretty small scale structure with limited traffic.
Could a gas station be built there?
There
Sounds
used to
like
be a
there
gas
used to be
station
one.
there to put, tractor fuel.
If it was grandfathered in, but I'd let Joey tell you for sure, but I don't think because of regulatory requirements, you could actually put in a new one now, no.
Okay, thank y'all very much. We
Thank you.
hear from the applicant who's got some time left.
If the applicants
So
wish to come
applicant,
forward to-
you've got 5 minutes and
26.
something seconds left. We're not saying you have to use it, but you have it if you want it, so.
Ms. Carpenter, you had asked about gas station, it would be permitted in that zone district.
My name is Paul Simu, 328 Richmond Hill Drive. I wanted to speak on to a few of the things that we had heard in rebuttal to our submission. One of the things that we heard was that the height was inappropriate for the area. I don't know if you're able to pull up the map, but directly next door is a 2-story dwelling. Directly across the street is a 2-story dwelling. The
Do you
next,
know the height of those? Are they taller? I would think for 2 stories, it's gotta be taller.
yeah, so
than
those are
8 feet.
2-story with a hip roof, so usually that would be anywhere from 25 to 35 feet, somewhere in between there. So the one directly next door conforms to that. The one across the street conforms to that. The 3 next door to that are also 2-story. And the one to the right of the one across the street, I believe, is a 1-story house. So we don't believe that 34 feet or 34
So
feet.
your position is the abutting properties and the one across the street are, that this would be compatible in height?
Correct. Yes, sir. And we do understand that there isn't really much precedence here because this is a commercial lot in an area that is residential. Most of these parcels are zoned R40, R80, but we have to deal with what we have here. And we have a parcel that's 0.58 of an acre that's on a commercial corridor. So there was like you said, there was a mass rezoning, I believe, in this area to RS80. This parcel, and I believe 4 or 5 other ones, weren't caught in that because they were zoned commercial. I want to say it's the Church of Christ, and there's two or three other ones over there. But I don't believe that if we have 2 dwellings on this parcel, it will create precedence, if that makes sense. So I do understand that there are concerns about stormwater, water runoff, all of that. There would be the same concerns if we built multifamily. There would be the same concerns if we built a convenience store. There would be the same concerns if we did anything mixed use. Stormwater does look at every single building permit that comes through. Just because it's under 10,000 square feet of impervious surface, we're still required to abide to the stormwater management regulations. So usually that's French drains, pavers, whatever mitigation system we're required to do based on how much runoff we have on this property. So the 2 houses that we're proposing here, they're 2,600 square feet. Their base square footage is, I believe, around 1,600 square feet, and they have a shared driveway in between. So it's hard for me to believe the argument that would be giving, that us building that would be worse than us building something mixed use or commercial where there's other issues that come in play other than just stormwater.
Do you know what your front setback is from the right of way?
So our minimum setback, I believe, per the zoning is 40 feet. Our contextual setback on this parcel, which is taken off of the 2 properties directly next door, I believe was around 42 to 43 feet.
Okay.
And the garages are rear loaded with, like I said, with a shared driveway in between to try to keep parking away from the front of the structure.
Also, it was stated by the opposition that we didn't present plans or spoke to the community, which is not true. We did meet with the community beforehand. We did present our plans. We spoke to Councilwoman Hancock about it, and for this specific reason, because we knew what was allowed per the zoning code, and we wanted to tie in the community to build something that we thought was more homogeneous with the neighborhood. So that meeting with the neighborhood was held, and most of the people here today in this room were present.
Any questions?
Any more questions?
Any questions?
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you, and we'll discuss.
Well, Mr., before you do, the council member.
Oh, I'm
would like to
sorry, yeah, sorry
address.
about that, Council Lady.
That was the one thing Joey warned me about was, don't let us close the public hearing before you speak. Thank you. So, Tanya Hancock,
Could you turn your
do a,
microphone on? It'll turn red if you'll push it. There you go.
how's that?
That's good, thank you.
You can tell that I don't come here very often. Tanya Hancock, Metro Council, District 9. I don't know if Jesse introduced himself when he was up here, but he is the president of the Rural Neely's Bend Neighborhood Association. And he was correct in talking about our rezoning 2 years ago to get any properties that were, 1.8 acres or more rezoned to RS 80 if they were R40 from Evergreen all the way down to and including Minnie's Lane to be consistent with the T2 rural maintenance policy. And while I know that you guys don't often consider policy when you're doing your exceptions, the T2 rural maintenance policy, like rural maintenance, means it's wanting to change things gradually. Like we know things are going to change, but we don't want to all of a sudden pick up a suburban neighborhood and stick it down in rural farmland. And so we have a variety of sizes of properties up and down the road from this particular property. And typically when we're looking at divisions of property, even in accordance with their zoning rights, we still look at a 70% to the 5 on the left and 5 on the right on the same side of the road. So if you look at all of the property sizes, 5 north, 5 south, the total is about 40 acres, which is about 4 acres per property. And if you look at the red front footage, the total is about 2,000 feet or about 200 feet per property. So we're looking at a property of 0.58 acres, which is already a lot smaller than the average, as well as 80 feet of road front footage. And then if you put 2 houses to divide that, you're looking at 40 feet of road front footage, which is smaller than any of the other houses to the left or the right. So that's not really consistent with the gradual changes in the rural maintenance. I do have to defend our community and the fact that we are one of the very few plurality districts in Nashville, Metro Nashville, where we have about 30% Hispanic, 30% Black, 30% white. We're very proud of this. We live amicably with all populations, and I just wanted to make sure and mention that because there was a mention of the family that lives next door, which we totally welcome, accept, and want them to feel comfortable living here. I think that the 2024-187 that did change the policy in July was intended to be on transit routes, and this is at the end of a dead-end street. And in granting such approval of this special exception application, you're supposed to determine that the applicant has demonstrated that the relief being requested will not be injurious to surrounding properties. And you'll have to judge for yourself if it has. Will having such tight lots, tighter than any of the other ones in the area, be injurious? The neighbors believe it will. I know that there is the ability to build more, but it's not the requirement. They could have just as easily had to come for a special exception to build 1 house, since it is Zone C. And frankly, this escaped me when we were doing the rezoning. We eliminated all properties that were too small. We didn't think to look at the actual zoning of them, having had no idea that there was a CN in this area, which is not compliant with the T2 rural maintenance policy. So I'd like you to think about all of those avenues as we move forward, and I'll trust your best judgment. Thank you.
Councilmember,
Yes.
thank you for making reference to the policy. I think that's helpful for us to kind of be able to keep that in context as well. So one question that I had, a lot of this seems to be a bit of a rub between, there's been a submission for 2 single-family residential homes. It's currently zoned in a manner that they could potentially avail themselves of 3, a sort of a 3-unit structure. And I don't know what, if any, light you can shed on what community conversations have happened of, there is something that is likely to go on this property based upon how it's zoned. You get into regulatory taking territory if it's just completely wiped off and becomes, a green, unusable piece of property. Have you had discussions, or do you have any sort of light to shed on does compatibility mean fewer residential units, or does compatibility mean aesthetic and design?
I think that the general consensus of the neighborhood meeting was that compatibility meant fewer neighborhood residential units, and I believe that there were people present at the meeting that said, we don't want anything, just don't build anything. And I explained to them that that's not the deal. This is owned by someone, they have rights to build something. And the general consensus of the group was that they would like 1 single family home. I had actually mentioned that prior to even having the community meeting with the developer on the phone. I'd even mentioned, if you want to build 2, can you build 1 in front of the other so it doesn't look so different and so tight? It will look tall and skinny, which is what everyone in the rural neighborhoods are not excited about. And that was not something that they were willing to do. They said on the phone they were willing to consider it, but I guess in looking at the design, it didn't work for what they were going to do. But yeah, the majority of the neighborhood was saying that we'd like 1 residential home, and there was a realtor there that could quote instances of large homes that have sold for, a significant amount of money, where they thought that the developer would be able to bring in the same, but we didn't end up with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll close the public hearing and discuss. Mr. Hargis, can you put the Google, I'd like to, when you have the Google Maps up to show the adjoining properties, can you point out to us the property at issue and then kind of show us the abutting properties, because that was pretty helpful. So is that it on the right?
No, sir, it'll be, it's this parcel right in here.
Right here, okay.
Yes, sir.
And can you pan around, so?
Yes, sir. South. That's across the road. And then to the northeast. I think there's a house just on this tree line here. This would be the subject lot.
Okay. Appreciate it.
It's a tricky case. I think, on one hand, I'm hearing a desire for this to be a single-family home from the feel of the neighborhood. That's not a feasible. That's not something I think that, wouldn't necessarily. We can't force people to significantly reduce what they can do with their property. I do think that, the CN option does allow for the concept of having density, but putting that density into a single structure. So, I think the question is, you could put a single building, a triplex, one house that's got 3 units built into it. it's gonna look and feel, they could theoretically look and feel like what's in the area around it. And, you know, and it's, I mean, it's one of those, something's gonna be here that's more than what's, you know, what I think the neighborhood wants. And so I think the question then is a single structure with more units, more compatible with what's around there, or is two single-family homes that are sort of this nature? From the Google images, I mean, it seems like the sort of height question is kind of all over the place in this area. You've got stuff that's close to the road, you have stuff that's far set back, and it looks like it varies based upon age. So, I mean, I'm extremely sympathetic to the area because, I mean, it's a beautiful rural area. There's a lot of green space. Preserving green space is good. Preventing stormwater runoff is good. I would, you know, insist we consider some sort of condition that required to make sure that stormwater didn't impact these folks' property if we did anything. But, I mean, I don't think, this isn't the body that is an end run around a rezoning on one hand, but it's also not, you know, we have something that's presented before us and we have to decide whether these two homes meet the standard or whether, you know, a 3-unit apartment, you know, a single home with 3 apartments built into it, mixed housing type thing would go in. And so we might deny this special exception and the neighborhood may have a 3-unit single structure in it, and that's something that could happen. So I'm kind of interested in everybody's thoughts on that, but those are the sort of issues I feel like I can identify with what's going on here.
Well, it's hard to know the height of the abutting properties. I wish we knew the height and how they would compare, because this does seem to be a little bit taller, if I had to guess, than what's there, and so that, to me, that's not compatible. So I'm leaning towards maybe not approving, but I'd like to also hear more.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, the issue boils down to one issue. It's not what's more compatible, single family but is the 14 feet of additional height they're requesting, will it adversely impact abutting properties? And I'm with you. I just, I mean, we don't know what the height of the abutting properties is. There's one across the street that I can't tell whether would be considered a direct frontage home or not, that looks pretty tall, but then the ones that abut, I can't really tell. So that's kind of where I am on it.
I think those are good points. I appreciate y'all raising them because I probably wasn't able to articulate it. I think the idea too is that there is that blue sort of wooden house that's immediately adjacent to it. That probably, I guess, is the sort of one in terms of looking at compatibility. Is that going to be the most compatible?
Yeah, I don't know that there's one directly across the street.
Yeah.
So it looks like it might be kind of down the road a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the images are doesn't seem to be a real pattern to be gleaned from a development pattern to be gleaned from sort of what's there, which is okay. I mean, there's plenty of areas where you've got wild variations, but you know, I think we have to be mindful of the character of this area while being, you know, honest and you know, lawful about the nature of what someone's property rights are. I mean, that's our ultimate task here. So,
Mr. Cole, any thoughts?
You mentioned character. How are we defining character? Is it the overall architectural style or what? Because it's not consistent.
yeah, that's when, and I think that's an interest. You know, there's the sort of compatibility character design. You have a lot size question, right? So there's large lots here. That's one factor. that I think we have to kind of think about. Another factor, I think, is they are mostly single structure, single family properties, as opposed to like a more dense single family structure. And then, a third sort of factor is, this was a CN property. Historically, it was a commercial use. It was a gas station at one point. Mr. Holloman made a really good point in his presentation that, I mean, there's in and around my area, there's off Belmont Boulevard, there's lots of sort of these small neighborhood type commercial structures that fit in with the character and of the sort of surrounding areas. And so I think we kind of encountered with a chicken or egg scenario, and what I'm trying to work through by just rambling, I guess, here is, is there a way to kind of, is there a way to come up with something that works for, this neighborhood as the folks who live there see it, but, acknowledges that there is going to be something done at this property, and it's not going to sit vacant, and it's probably not going to be a single family home, just based upon the current zoning and the current uses.
Yeah, I mean, it's the building style and height. What I hear the opposition, the neighbors saying is that they are not okay with the building height, style and height. They do think it will adversely impact them. We don't know what the height is of the building next to it. I mean, I'm almost wanting to see if we can defer and have the neighbors and because I think the neighborhood, a lot of what I'm hearing, their concerns are going to be concerns they're going to have if they do what they can lawfully do without coming before this board at all, which is building 3 units back there. So, I just think
I might urge that we defer this a meeting or two in order to give, because I heard sort of statements from the council member that related to the number of units, but I also heard statements from Mr. Holloman, and all of them were very valid about the sort of design, scope, and structure. And so I do think that the neighborhood probably needs to have an internal discussion about, realistically, it is a single structure with 3 units in it that would be allowed, subject to design, is that something that would be more compatible versus a 2-unit structure? And maybe we reopen the public hearing if we defer this to allow,
right.
the applicant to present and rebuttal time.
And I'll say, and I understand what the neighbors are saying, but the standard here is it shall not adversely impact abutting properties. That's the building style or height. And it doesn't really say it's got to be compatible. It just says it can't adversely impact. And to me, that could be interpreted as unless it really drove down property values, even if the neighbors thought it was not compatible, they would still have met the standard that they're not adversely impacting abutting property. So, and I do think that a lot of what I'm hearing from the neighbors is that are going to be the same issues that are going to come up if they build 3 units.
Well, they might build the 3 units and it might just be 20 feet tall, which is
True. I mean,
I
agree with that.
Code and so this is subjective a bit, but I live in a neighborhood, and thankfully I'm far away from this part of a neighborhood where I think a 40-foot 2-family structure was built next to very historic, nice bungalows, and I feel like that did bring the property values down. I mean, I would not want to live on that road, to be honest. So there is something to be said about incompatibility of neighborhoods.
Well, and I think that the question of adverse impact, I think, is a pretty broad thing. I mean, it's sort of what is going to, the neighbors are really the people who live in the area are the ones who can speak to what's going to be the adverse impact. And, I think we hear variations of credible and non-credible kind of statements on that. And I think that these neighbors have been credible, and I think I appreciate them showing up today. I think they've made some really, really, really fine points for their neighborhood. But I just think that the current property owners and the folks who are, I think in good faith, trying to comply with, or trying to be compatible with this area. You know, we need to assume everybody's coming at this with positive intentions, but we also need to be clear-eyed about sort of the common set of facts and realities. And so I think a deferral probably makes sense in terms of, it doesn't sound like there's probably going to be 4 votes one way or the other today. And honestly, a deferral, I think given the attendance issues that it seems like we've had kind of back and forth recently and the holidays coming up, we might consider a deferral, you know, to prevent one side or the other from kind of being unfairly impacted by our, you know, inability to have a full slate up here.
Yeah, I don't think, it's not gonna get 4 votes, that's, so, I mean, the options are, we can deny the special exception request, or we can defer it, and with the idea that, the applicant and the neighbors see if there's some middle ground. And you know, there are a lot of people that are here, and I don't, you know, want them to be drugged back if they don't want to be here. But
Yeah, I mean,
on the other hand,
I'd like to ask that they take another shot at having a community discussion, and knowing, kind of having heard what they hear from us today, to see if there's something, a place where they can meet and find some sort of agreement that, you know, the neighbors understand what can be done here potentially by right, with conditions versus, you know, this sort of plan as submitted. Knowing that it's probably unlikely that this is not, you know, not everybody may walk away with exactly kind of what they're asking for here based upon some really good submissions in either direction. So I'm going to make a motion that we defer this to the December 5th meeting, because the deferral will still mean that if we rule on it and it's tied up on votes or something, it'll come back in January or second meeting in December.
Yeah, we have 2 meetings
Okay.
in December, the 5th and the 19th,
Yeah.
and then we roll back over to January 6th.
Yeah.
okay, there's a motion.
Do we want to check to be sure that I don't know if the
Okay.
council
So
or folks
we'll
can.
reopen the public hearing to ask the applicant and the opposition is there any reason December 5th would not work to have this put back on the agenda?
Yeah, we would have it, it would be reset, the parties would have the opportunity to present, and opposition would have the opportunity to present as well. I think depending on, you know, we can, if there's anything that gets submitted to us in the interim, we can make the decision at the meeting if it's gonna be 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but, you know, given the number of folks, we probably would allow 10 minutes per side, I would expect.
So sounds like December 5th would probably, any reason December 5th does not work? December 5th, okay?
Would there be a way to have another 5 or 10 minutes for each side to speak, maybe for the end of this meeting, or do we need to?
You know, I'll ask.
Yeah, I mean,
members about that. I think we've reached a conclusion today.
Yeah, part of our admonition, I think, is the hope that the opposition and your group can come together to have a conversation beforehand.
All right, so there's a motion to defer till December 5th. Is there a second?
Second, and as conversation, I'll say I agree with you that it's difficult to prove the adverse effect. And what I said before was my
Sure.
subjective opinion,
No,
but I do agree with what you said.
Can I pose one quick question? Is the idea that we are gonna have another community meeting to discuss, because I'm just thinking about Thanksgiving holiday coming up, and if we were to have an additional one.
I mean, this is obviously you know, we can't direct or order another community meeting, but, you know, I would recommend perhaps a discussion maybe among a neighborhood, a president or a leader or group, you know, somebody who's, can kind of carry the neighbors' thoughts and discuss it, and then.
I think the question is, would the BZA be open to deferring until the 19th or until the January hearing or meeting?
Yes, that was my question then.
Well, I think concerned about having enough time between now and December 5th, which is, it's a month. I know there's a holiday in there, but, I mean, I don't really like the idea of deferring it more than a month. I just don't.
I think we should
need to
defer,
do
I think we can defer it a month, and then
Right.
if we come back and people submit, you know, if it becomes clear that they were not able to have that discussion
Right.
during that time, then, you know, the applicant can notify us and request a deferral for additional time if it's not been able, something for them to happen, so.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Did you second it? Okay, all in favor? Okay, so that's deferred. And I would tell both sides on this, it would not have passed today based on the concerns, but I think that it is, everybody's in agreement that it's a close case, so I think everybody has an interest in trying to see if there's any way to get it worked out. All right, next case.
Okay, our next case for the board will be our final case on the October 17th agenda, Mr. Sam. And I would ask those folks when they're departing, if they could do so as quiet as possible, please. Mr. Chairman, can we take a recess for 5?
Sure. Yeah, let's take a recess for 5 minutes. Sorry, yeah, I wish we would an hour and 20 minutes.
Be case 2024-227. Mr. Sam Said, the appellant and owner of the property located at 1516 22nd Avenue North, requesting a variance from the street setback in RS5. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're having conversations, please do so in the hallway. Thanks, Christy. Christy's coming after him now, so they're in trouble. The appellant seeking to construct an addition to the front porch, referred under the board sections 1740-180, item B. Let me get this PowerPoint back up. Here we are. The subject property is located on the east margin of 22nd Avenue North. The variance request here is a 4-foot variance request. They're required sorry, I've lost my cursor here. A 34-foot street setback based upon the contextual setback average, and they are proposing 30 feet. This is looking at the subject property and the front porch area, and then views of the homes on either side, and then a view I took from, kind of give you an idea in comparison with the other homes in the block face. But that's our case record as we have it. Are there any parties present in opposition to case 227? Okay, Mr. Said, you're welcome. Come forward, sir. You got 5 minutes to present your case to the board.
My name is Sam Said. I'm the owner of 1516 22nd Avenue North. I acquired this property for my family, and I inherited this front porch. And I'm hoping you approve the setback. The property on 1512 and the property on 1520, they are even further, than my property. They're closer to the street more than my property. So just breaking this portion, just demolishing it, is just gonna be very harsh for me. This is an older property, and I don't want to mess with it. And also, time-wise for my family is not gonna work just to fix it and just demolish the whole thing. I bought it so I can move into it. I have a son that was accepted to early college high school downtown, and it's closer. I live near Laverne. I take him to school every day, back and forth, and traffic is just so hard for me.
Is this 4-foot 9-inch encroachment? Can you put the picture back up of the front there, Mr. Artis? Did this already exist when you bought the property?
Yes,
this?
I inherited this.
You're not constructing any of this?
No.
It's just there when you bought it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Now, how did this come, was there an abatement notice or something issued on this, Joey?
Let me pull that up.
I'm just
and I'll
curious
see if there's anything.
frankly, who would complain about this, but.
Yeah, there's nobody here in opposition, so I don't know what.
Yeah, I don't have any other.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing then, and do you have any questions?
No, it's just the way it was written up. It seemed like there was an addition that was going to be made to the existing porch, and you said there's not.
No, there isn't.
Okay, correct.
It's the way it is.
Okay,
correct.
so you're
Yeah,
just seeking to keep the existing?
Yes, please.
Looks like Property Standards has got it coded as an audit, so it may be more of a neighborhood kind of, they sweep a neighborhood and find violations, so.
All right, so we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
Look, it seems contextually in line with the neighboring properties, so I think works contextually with the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think that, it's not self-imposed because it was there when the applicant acquired the property.
that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the variance based upon the unique circumstances.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion, and a second. All in favor? That passes. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Mr. Say. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that completes the October 17th agenda. So our next case will be case 2024-230. Mr. Gustavo Morales is the appellant, Frank Jordan III, owner of the property located at 110 Rhine Drive. Mr. Morales is requesting an IMD appeal to change a legally non-conforming structure in the RS20 district. Mr. Morales is remodeling an existing garage and converting it to a residence.
Did you say we're on 230?
230, yes.
Deferred or continued?
229, we dismissed it. It was,
It's dismissed, all right.
yeah, it was not
sorry.
advertised
Okay,
by the
appreciate
appellant. That case will be coming back to the board at a later date. Okay. This is the aerial photograph of the subject property. You see the structure it's located here, and the structure in question is the structure located at the rear of the property. It is legally non-conforming to side setback over on the side. A survey provided by the applicant shows the structures, even a portion of it are actually over on the adjoining neighbor. And then this is the view of the subject property upon my visit there. And then these are the adjoining properties. And I'll put this aerial back. This was shot in March of 23. So it's the latest photo I have. Are there any parties present in opposition to the case on Rhine Drive? Okay, so seeing none, you'll have 5 minutes to present your testimony to the board.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Gustavo Morales y vivo en la residencia 110 Ryan Drive, Madison, Tennessee, 37115.
Good afternoon. My name is Gustavo Morales. I live in 110 Rhine Drive. My name is Isabel Carrillo. I live in 411 East Campbell Road, Madison, and I'm his translator today.
Okay, thank you.
Ya tengo aproximadamente como más de 12 años viviendo en esta residencia.
It's been close to 12 years that I've been living in this house.
El propósito de la cual yo quisiera terminar el garage existente que tiene más de 20 años de estar ahí.
The reason is I want to finish the garage that's been built for more than 20 years.
Porque ya mis hijos ya han crecido y ya no tenemos más espacio en el dúplex del frente. Y esta propiedad es una propiedad multifamiliar.
The reason is because my children have grown and we no longer fit, you could say, in the duplex, which the property calls for a two-family residence, and I think, bueno, explique.
Y por esa razón me gustaría terminar. Toda la estructura no se está alterando, ni se le está poniendo, ni se le está quitando, sino que se va a usar la misma estructura, así como aparece en la foto.
And we are not going to be adding or removing to the structure. It's going to be the same footprint.
I have a question. Is this going to be made into living space?
Yes.
That's what I understand.
Yes, a living space.
It's going to have is it going to have a bathroom and shower and all that kind of stuff in it?
Baño, cocina, todo.
Sí, va a ser una vivienda normal, se puede decir.
Yes, it's going to be a full residence.
Porque el dúplex de enfrente, como ya no tenemos espacio, se va a hacer una sola vivienda y en la parte de atrás va a ser la otra vivienda. Por ejemplo, la vivienda del frente va a ser la letra A y la vivienda de atrás va a ser la letra B.
Okay. The duplex in the front, he is converting it into one house. And then, so he's gonna have Unit A is gonna be the front house and Unit B, the proposed garage apartment.
El motivo por el cual se está haciendo este trabajo es porque, acorde, ¿verdad?, con nuestra cultura, pues a nosotros los padres de familia nos gusta mantener a los hijos a que se críen cerca en el mismo lugar. Y estamos viendo que el garage es adecuado para poderlo hacer como una vivienda.
The reason why I am doing this is because as the culture, the Hispanic culture, we tend to want our children close to us, to grow close to us, and so we see that the garage has the space needed in order to...
Para completarlo, para terminarlo, hacerlo una vivienda normal. Y no tengo ninguna objeción, ¿verdad? He vivido en este vecindario todo este tiempo. Nunca he tenido ningún inconveniente con ningún vecino. Incluso mi vecino al que está pegado el garage, él se llama Jeff. Él no pudo venir, pero él mandó un correo electrónico donde él especifica que él no tiene ningún inconveniente con que yo viva allí.
Okay, and I've been living in this property for a while, and I've never had any issues with any of my neighbors. It's one of my neighbors by the name of Jeff. He sent an email saying that he gave his okay, in other words, to convert this garage if the appeal goes through.
No sé si tienen alguna pregunta.
I don't know if you have any questions?
Any questions?
I have a zoning question. So it's zoned RS.
Yes, it's a legal duplex, grandfathered duplex, and so we would allow, the code actually allows for a couple options. You can build a second residence on the property, but we would require you to take the principal duplex that was and renovate it and take the second unit out before we'd give a UNO for the back one. And I was looking through his permit application, that appears to be what's occurred here. It may have started that work a little bit prematurely, so, and that's what kind of prompted him to come in and start the permit process, which we would send to this board because that garage, its location is legal but non-conforming to setback. So it's an item D appeal to change that non-conforming garage from garage to house.
And the standard for that is the new use has to be more compatible than the former use.
Yes, sir, more appropriate. Yeah, more compatible with the previous use. Not really a change of use. The use is not changing. It's still a duplex, but it's just the use of that structure is changing from an accessory building to a house. So what we would do in a new situation, if he wanted to build that there, he'd have to get a variance because we applied greater setbacks for residential structures than we do for accessory buildings. So that's why he's in front of you, because that building is already too close to the property line for either standard.
But because it's a conversion.
But because it's a conversion,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, I don't think anybody has any further questions, so thank you very much. We'll close the public hearing and discuss. Well, I don't see how it makes it more non-conforming, and I think you can make an argument that it's probably more conforming if it's a residential structure than a garage, because the building in front of it is a residential structure.
Yeah.
So I'd make a motion, we approve the variance.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Case is approved on a vote of 4-0.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the next case quite a consent agenda. Here we go. Our next case is case on the top of page 5, case 2024-236. Mr. Rafael Cervantes is the owner and appellant of the property at 312 Delvin Drive, requesting a variance in the side setback in RS10 district. Sorry, I'm trying to get his PowerPoint up and running. The appellant has an existing carport that was constructed without permit, and he is seeking a variance to retain the carport where it's located. And let's see here, one second. Here we are. The subject property is located at the intersections of Delvin Drive. And this is the existing residence. The carport is located here, and it's 810 square feet. It is located to the rear of the existing residence. In this instance, the zoning code requires a 5-foot setback. We asked him, because we're unsure, since it was built without a permit, to get a survey, and he did obtain a survey, and it came out the survey was at 4.5 feet. So we sent him to the board to seek a variance for the half
the
foot.
required setback is,
It's just 5.
so it's just half a foot off?
Half a foot, yes, sir. And you'll see that's the structure there, and constructed similar style, brick and side and A-frame. And the variance portion is on the back corner of that structure. Very back corner there. Are there any parties present in opposition to the case on Delvin? Okay, Mr. Chairman, seeing none, Mr. Ventus, you'll have 5 minutes to present your case, sir.
Buenas tardes, soy Rafael López Cervantes y mi domicilio es 312 Delvin Drive, Nashville, Tennessee, 37211.
Hello, my name is Maria Garcia, and I live in 404 Indian Hills, Gallatin, Tennessee, and he's my stepfather, so we just came here. First, that what he wants to let you know is that he wants to apologize because he built it without the permit. So that's the first thing that he wants to let you know. Also, he wants to keep it because, my mom is always having trouble to walk, so it's very comfortable to them to keep it and live, park close to the house and walk to the house.
Any questions? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and discuss. Well, I'd say it's a half a foot, and I would say it's a very odd-shaped lot. So I think there's a hardship there, but I would also say I think that the applicant's really lucky it's just a half a foot, because this board usually does not look very favorably on buildings without permits. And but this is a half a foot, and in my mind, it's an odd-shaped lot, so I think there is a hardship.
It's also just a corner of the garage. It's not the full
Correct.
length. It's just clipping it.
We might, 6 inches could be a surveying, error or something along those lines, so.
And I didn't mean to say garage, I meant carport.
Yeah.
We did have a letter of objection or concern, right?
What's that?
We did have a letter of objection on this one?
No, I think there's a letter of support is what I see.
No, page 6.
Okay, yeah, we did, I'm sorry.
Is that person here?
No.
But that concern was about the trees that could fall on it, which doesn't,
6 inches isn't gonna change the difference.
yeah, I don't think 6 inches would change that.
Yeah, based upon the shape of the lot, I'll make a motion, we approve the variance as requested.
I'll second it. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, that passes.
Okay, that case is granted on a motion of 4-0. Moving right along, next case is located on the bottom of page 5, 2024-238, 2K Development LLC is the appellant and owner of the property located at 216 Vaughn's Gap Road, requesting a variance from the street setback requirements in RS 80. Appellant seeking to construct a new single-family residence. Any parties present in opposition to case 238?
Is there any opposition? There were a bunch of letters, as I recall.
Okay.
Nobody here, okay.
All right, let me go through the photographs first, sir, gentlemen, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. Get there. There you are. The subject property is located on the east margin of Vaughn's Gap Road. This is a setback case. This case deals with the contextual street setback along Vaughn's Gap. Zoning code requires that you meet the greater of one of these three items, and those three items are a plat, a contextual setback survey based upon the four closest homes to this residence, or the zoning code table, and whichever is most restrictive governs. And in this case, the most restrictive is the contextual setback. The zoning code requires a 40-foot setback. The plat for the neighborhood requires 100-foot, and the contextual setback based on the four homes that you see in this survey done by Mr. Garrett requires 190.3 feet, and that would be the dashed line that's located there. And the applicant's proposing 140 feet from the right-of-way is Vaughn's Gap. The zoning code recent amendment that does this does allow me as zoning administrator to toss out outliers or to use, I just felt in this particular case, although these homes did, as you can see, the mathematics did skew the average upwards, they just didn't skew. When I looked at the pattern of development, it just wasn't, a major deviation from the line that was out there. So that's why I kept those in that thing. So it did have some effect, obviously, on his average. But so we talked, I believe my staff talked with him as far as filing an appeal. And so they're before you today. And this is looking at the existing residence, I believe it's on the property. This home will be raised. There'll be a new construction on here. Is that correct? Okay, I thought so. Okay, so that's the existing home that's on the property, and then the views looking north and south. North, tough to see those, again, as Vaughn's Gap curves, as you saw in the tax map photos. It's tough to see those. There's the existing house to the immediate south of the property. But I'll leave this up. This is probably the best of the...
Just to make sure, Joey, that we just are determining whether they've met the variance standards. We don't have to find that you erred.
That's correct. No, that's not an item A. It's just a variance hardship standard.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I misspoke. I was thinking of another case. There was no opposition in the file on this.
To this one. So, any parties present opposed to case 216 Vaughn's Gap Road? Okay, seeing none. Gentlemen, you'll have 5 minutes to present.
For the zoning administrator, I appreciate hearing that background. My name is Matt DeVries, and my colleague Summer Geyer, who's on the application, her father passed away yesterday, so I'm pitch hitting today, and so a lot of the background was new to me. But Matt DeVries from the Buckhalter Law Firm. It's One Music Circle South, Suite 300, Nashville, Tennessee 37203. As a number of you members know, I am a construction attorney, and so my practice is primarily contractors and developers. But I think this case illustrates what puts my skill set best, because we're going to look at something both from a legal perspective, but just from the constructability set point. The Metro Code zoning 171230, the applicable overlay that you were talking about, the contextual guidelines that were put in place. Subsection A says the minimum required setbacks for the RS, and this is RS 80, districts shall be an average setback of 4 nearest single-family homes, and it goes on the same block that face and are oriented to the same street. And here's the key language. It says, and that follow the established development pattern. And we would submit to the board that this homeowner is proposing to demolish the single-family home and build a new single-family home in the exact same location that it existed. That's the exact same location that previously existed. The existing home was built around 1975 along the rest of the neighborhood. Its current location is part of the neighborhood's established development pattern. The established development pattern is controlled by originally the 100-foot minimum setback that's recorded in the subdivision plat, as was noted by the administrator. The development pattern is controlled by significant topography, which was demonstrated in the applicant's application. Each lot, where it currently sits, if you look at it, if you look at the site plan, I don't know if the administrator has this, but what the applicant had submitted a site plan with the materials, and V2.3, which I believe is illustrated up there on the screen, shows the applicant's property, and then there's two properties to the north. That is 218 Bond Gap and 222. Those were the extremely far increased setbacks. And then the two to the south, there's 212 and 208. Well, the 212 and 208 are certainly more in line with the 100-foot setback on the plat. One of them was 119 feet and one of them was 131. So what the administrator had done was apply the two to the north, and we would suggest that the subsection C of the code allows the administrator the discretion to exclude any property that has a setback disproportionate to the other houses on the block face. And we think all these areas are consistent with more than 100-foot. The problem with this topography, though, is if you look at the two north houses, there is a gully that requires the homes that be built further back. And so I'm not sure if there were any pictures, photographs in the record. Again, I don't have the benefit of that, of what was submitted. I believe Ms. Geyer may have submitted those. But the two properties to the north, the setbacks are actually built at 222 on the first house and 282. The reasons why they're so far back is just the topography. There's a gully and a stream that goes there. And so the applicant's house sits in between these two pieces of property. And we would first suggest that established development plan or established development pattern is fully consistent with this home existing since 1975. This neighborhood was developed back then, and all the applicant wants to do is rebuild in that exactly same area. If you go through the actual legal requirements for the variance, we've submitted information supporting all the factors, the physical characteristics of the property. As a construction lawyer, I've got this house, and if we actually back this house up, and if you look at the site plan that we had submitted, and this is the first page, I don't know if the zoning administrator, do you have the site plan that was submitted with the application?
We have the topographical survey.
Okay, so the first page, if you see where it has existed, if you go towards the back end of the property, you see the 640 line over those, over those feet, there's about a 25% scope increase. If I move the property back or the house footprint back, it's going to require this homeowner to develop on a piece of property that is very difficult, and it's inconsistent with the current pattern. And I would just suggest the current pattern is a 2.2%. And so we just believe that the zoning administrator has the discretion to grant the variance and allow this homeowner to build exactly where the home was currently.
Well, he doesn't have that right now, but we do.
Correct.
That's why you're here.
Yes.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. So, I mean, to me, the front setback is, the zoning administrator has determined it's 190 feet. So to me, it's not a matter of, is this a item A appeal where there was an error about the front setback? This is a variance case, and to me, it looks like, I always, Ms. Carpenek and Mr. Kohler, the architects, but, it seems like there is a topographical issue here and as well as a tree line that creates a hardship, but I'll defer to y'all on that.
I'm in harmony with that and building back in place of existing. I'm fine with this one.
Yeah, I think too, just to, I know that, I think that this is a good case, a good example of Mr. Hargis looking at exactly what he should have in this circumstance. So I'll give Joey the pat on the back and a salute. And I do think that these are the types of scenarios, though, where the information that Mr. DeVries has mentioned is really important for us to consider, like the topography and things like that. The zoning administrator is looking at sort of where's the structure sit, and I do think that that's within his purview, and I think, he handled this exactly the right way. But I do think that this is a very strong case for a variance based upon the shape of the lot, and the topography of it, and appreciate the applicant's desire to build something that's not going to exacerbate or, increase runoff conditions. So I'll make a motion that we approve the variance as requested.
And I'll second it. There's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, variance granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, sir. Also, since you granted it, and I didn't know all that relevant information, I probably would have issued the permit. Had I known it was the same location, but okay, that's on me. But good to know for next time. Thank you, sir. All right, our next case is case 2000, this will be at the top of page 6, 2024-239, Cullen Morrow's, the appellant, Henrid Centennial Development LLC, owner of the property at 5701 Centennial Boulevard, requesting a variance from the street setback requirements in the CS district to allow the appellant to keep a fence they've constructed. Appellant's alleged jurisdiction under section 1740-180 IDB. I know there's opposition present. Besides the lady in the front row, are there any other parties opposed to case 239 that are present? Okay. Each side will, if the applicant will come forward, I'll go through our PowerPoint first. And I'll attempt to put 10 minutes on this clock instead of 1888. All right, let me go through the slides first, gentlemen, and I'll turn it over to you all. Again, since there is opposition present, just to remind you of your 10 minutes, you'll probably want to save some for rebuttal.
Is there opposition present?
There is, yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay, the subject property is located here on Centennial, 5701 Centennial. Actually, I may have picked the wrong parcel.
No, that's it.
Yeah, okay, I thought so. Just for some reason, that triangle down there was drawn to me. The subject property is this building. This building's currently being converted into a restaurant/bar, and that use is put in kind of a dog park area, a seating area located here, and with that, they've constructed a fence around it. The initial fence they were cited for, it was a solid fence. Solid fences inside in our zoning code require 10-foot minimum street setback from the right-of-way line back. The applicants did submit to me an example of a cutout or a fence design that I responded to would work and meet the zoning code.
And you don't need the 10-foot setback.
And you don't need 10-foot setback for an open fence.
Setback for the solid fence.
For a solid fence or a fence that's considered opaque by the zoning code. That's any fence that is less than 50% in the zoning code's words open. And how we've interpreted that over the years for picket type fences or privacy fences is, let's just say if I have a 4-inch board, I need 4 inches before my next board starts. If I have a 2-inch board, I need 2 inches before my next board starts. Chain link fences are considered open fences. Wrought iron are generally considered open fences. So that's the request, and that would be on all portions of this fence that run from the building down to the intersection and then back up the road directly behind it. This is my view of the fence, and I'm at the furthest end. I apologize for the sun glare on Centennial. These are views along Centennial. And then a portion of it, you'll see they've converted to a chain link fence. That portion of the fence, which is down here, and that runs up Centennial a ways, is compliant with the code. The portion before you are the portions that are solid that run along the back of the property and along Centennial that are solid in construction. That's the case records. We have it. We did receive an email from Councilmember Horton in support of the request. That came in just as the meeting was beginning. And again, opposition present. Gentlemen, you'll have 10 minutes to present your case. Again, you may want to save some of that 10 for rebuttal.
No.
It's on. If it's red, it's on.
Okay, it's red, it's on. Okay. My name is Sam Bohannon, 212 Overlook Circle, Brentwood, Tennessee. It's my address. Thank you for the board for hearing us today. And it's generally like Mr. Hargis was discussing, the fence is constructed along the, close to the property line. Part of the reason for that, the main reason for that is because of the strange shape of the property. There's right-of-way along Centennial on the north side. Ohio Street, I believe, is what is on the south side. And there's also to the east, the property narrows down as it progresses east. So if setting the fence in 10 feet would take up quite a significant portion of that property. I believe there's an exhibit in the package that's showing that. And the main reason for the opaqueness of the fence is just due to the type of facility it is with dogs, to help with the health and well-being of the dogs and the owners that are bringing their dogs there. And Austin may talk a little bit more to that specifically.
Yeah, with the
Could you
opaque
state your
fence.
name, please, sir? Your name and your address for the
Austin Gothier, 5117 Illinois Avenue. With the opaqueness of the fence there, Centennial Boulevard is, I believe it's 40 miles an hour. People travel a lot faster than that with big semis as well. If we did all of it chain link, it would pose a safety issue with dogs. The road noise, being that close would just disturb them quite a bit.
Any questions from the board? Okay, you've got, we'll hear from the opposition. You've got 8 minutes left for a rebuttal.
Hello. I think Mr. Hargis is, I have some slides.
If you could go ahead and state your name.
Yes, Nicole Williams, 2028 Edison Park Lane, Nashville, Tennessee, 37209. I'm within a 1/10 of a mile of this if you're walking through the streets, but as the crow flies, it's about 300 feet.
All right, Ms. Williams, I'm pulling up your.
Thank you, Mr. Hargis.
Sorry about that.
I promise it'll be worth it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Firewall. Here we go. Okay, here we go. There you are.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I am in opposition to this request. I'm going to present several arguments. And first I want to address the arguments presented by the applicant. It really boils down to the physical characteristics of the property, and that's just not enough. So I will go through all of the arguments or all of the factors that you consider when you look at variance requests. So the board shall not grant a variance without an affirmative finding of fact for each of the following standards based on evidence presented by the applicant. It's not enough. So we can say, yes, the physical characteristics of the property.
Could you start the clock on that? Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, sorry. That the lot is unique, but that's not enough because the standard goes on to say the exceptional blah, 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 or other extraordinary exceptional condition of such property would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to, or exceptional or undue hardship upon the owner of such property upon the strict application of any regulation enacted by the ordinance. So the applicant has to demonstrate that complying with the ordinance would present exceptional difficulty to carrying out their business plan. I would point out their business is already open. And they have replaced part of the fence, the opaque fence, with chain link. So that's clearly not presented any exceptional practical difficulty to opening their business.
So, and ma'am, and not just to ask you a question, because we understand all the factors, but as a neighbor, what is your opposition? What is your problem?
The harm to the public welfare. And I'll get into that if I can just go through but that's the big one that I'm going to focus on.
Okay.
But I did want to address what the applicant provided. So the idea that road noise being that close to the dogs would disturb the dogs, there's no evidence that the opaque fence cuts down on any noise, but really I will focus mostly on the harm to public welfare. Next slide, please. So in green is where I live, in yellow is the lot. It got sort of messed up, but that y'all are considering. As the applicant stated, Centennial is a heavily trafficked street classified as an arterial boulevard. People routinely drive 40 to 50 miles per hour. This is a growing residential neighborhood. New families are moving in constantly and development continues in the immediate area of the parcel. And there are also efforts to make this a more walkable and bikeable street underway. The MCSP, the Major and Collector Street Plan, indicates that that Centennial is already a constrained right-of-way and that there is a bike lane planned.
So let me stop you there.
Yeah.
How would this fence make it less walkable?
Because you can't see, as a pedestrian walking up on Ohio, you cannot see the cars coming down Centennial and the cars can't see you. There are no sidewalks on this side of Centennial. There are sidewalks on the other side of Centennial. And I walked this with my council member and he agreed that there were safety concerns. And I'm unsure why he still chose to support this variance request. So if you are a pedestrian walking down Ohio to try to get onto Centennial or to cross the street, there aren't any crosswalks in the immediate area. The visibility is incredibly constrained with the opaque fence. So a driver driving down Centennial at 40 to 50 miles an hour is not going to be able to see a pedestrian or a cyclist coming up from Ohio to cross Centennial from the residential area to the more commercial. So like if you want to get to anything commercial aside from this bar, you have to cross the street to get over there. And the sidewalk is on the other side of the street. So as a pedestrian, you don't even have like an out if you get up past the fence and you see that there's a car coming down. Because the fence literally butts right up to the right of way, you've got nowhere to go. You're dead. Like that's just plainly what it is. You don't have a sidewalk, you don't have a strip of grass to try to get into to get out of the way of cars coming. And you can see it's also kind of at a bend, and that creates an additional issue with visibility. And next slide, please. So this is just, Oh, and this is a bar. So imagine people like walking home after having a few drinks at night. That creates a serious safety concern. Okay, there's also cars that like line up on the side of the fence that's on Ohio, and a car isn't going to be able to see coming off of Centennial, those cars lined up. So that creates a possible motorist collision. So my second argument, developers have a responsibility to understand and abide by the law. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. The applicants were aware of the violation. They were on notice from Mr. Hargis of the steps that were necessary to cure the violation, and they chose to ignore that clear instruction and to take only partial steps to remedy the violation. And now they're coming to you asking you to say that that's okay. They've built the fence. They've opened their business with the fence not in compliance. They have a temporary UNO, as I understand it. So the applicant provided a series of emails in the packet to you, and I just wanted to highlight a few of those just to show that they knew that this was an issue and they chose not to fix it. August 5th, Mr. Hargis emailed their civil engineer saying that the fence is definitely in violation of the code. Next slide, please. August 16th, the engineer emailed Mr. Hargis, provided a few different options for curing the violation, one of which was the option that the applicant has chosen, which was not an option that Mr. Hargis said was acceptable. Next slide, please. August 22nd, Mr. Hargis emailed the development team, clearly saying, this fence example you sent me below will comply with the code. Next slide, please. August 22nd, Mr. Gauthier, I can't remember, sorry, emailed the civil engineer. I want to make sure I understand. So the entire fence needs to be modified, including the Ohio Avenue side, and not just that one corner on the northeast side. The engineer replied, yes, that is correct. It will need to be the entire length of fence along both Centennial and Ohio. Next slide, please. Then the applicant emailed Councilmember Horton to say, hey, we're getting different advice from NDOT and from Joey. And instead of waiting to hear back which one of those he should follow, he went with NDOT's advice, which was more convenient for his business. And that's the argument here, is like, he wants this because it serves his business interests. I don't want it because I'm concerned about public safety. All I want is for him to comply with the fence ordinance, which would mean just putting up a chain link fence. He doesn't, if he wants to move it 10 feet in and have it opaque, if that's really important, he can do that. Like, there are options. And there's nothing in the record indicating that codes ever approved, nor would they approve a continued violation of the fence ordinance. Next slide, please. NDOT doesn't have any jurisdiction to grant variances from the fence ordinance, and I wouldn't expect the applicant to know that, but they've got a sophisticated team working for them, and I would expect the team to know that. NDOT also contemplated in one of their emails that there may be continued concerns with the sight line. So it's not enough to just say NDOT signed off on it and said the sight line was fine here, and so we're all safe and we're all good. NDOT said in an August 2nd email, once installed, if NDOT does get additional complaints about sight distance at the intersection as it pertains to the fence, we may have to explore another option with the fence. So I would like to consider this my additional complaint about sight distance at the intersection. So even NDOT didn't definitively say, this is gonna fix it. This addresses sight distance and public safety concerns. Next slide, please. And then my final argument, and I wish Ms. Davis was here, certain horses aren't meant for certain courses. Like in a July 29th email from the engineer to Mr. Hargis, he said, this is a dog bar where guests bring their dogs with them. So the fence is necessary for the business to operate as intended. The applicant chose to locate their business on a parcel that doesn't seem to very easily or like appropriately support what they're trying to do in the way that they're trying to do it. They knew that Centennial was there. They should have known that there was a fence requirement, and when they were informed, they went to lengths to not comply. The BZA is not responsible for rectifying the applicant's mistake in due diligence. And in a portion of the applicant's email to Councilmember Horton, he said that the applicant said if they replace the fence with chain link, drivers are, quote, going to see people and dogs running around. And he expressed concern that that might distract them from driving. So first off, there are dogs everywhere in the nations. If you're not seeing people and dogs running around, that's like a sign of the end times. And secondly, and more importantly, there's a clear way to remedy that concern. Simply build the fence 10 feet back from the right-of-way as required by the ordinance. If that's really the concern, they can just comply with the ordinance by building it 10 feet back from the right-of-way. I don't believe that that's a big enough concern to cross the hurdle of the public safety issue presented here. And basically, they want to maximize space for their patrons, which is understandable, but they can do that by fixing the rest of the fence and making it chain link so that motorists can see, cyclists can see, pedestrians can see. Next slide, please. So in summary, they can't demonstrate that they've met every provision of the standards for variance. Most importantly, they can't demonstrate that there's no harm to the public welfare. And I would hope that you've seen that I have demonstrated that there is clear harm to the public welfare. That harm was noted by NDOT and by the applicant when they indicated that something needed to be done about the fence because of the sightline issues. So the applicants were made aware of the violation. They were given a guidebook for how to fix it, and they chose to ignore that for the sake of their business interests. And it's not the BZA, like, I don't think the BZA should be in the business of protecting business interests over public safety. There's a lot of people walking and biking over there, and I just hope no one dies, like, truly, and I'm not being hyperbolic. Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll hear from the.
Do you have any
opposition.
questions?
Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
The opposition has 8 minutes left. And I have some questions about what NDOT is, so if you are thinking about not using the time. So, question, this has been, what you're proposing is to replace some of this fence with a chain link fence, or has that already been done?
That's already been done. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And that's what NDOT requested to be done?
Correct. That was in coordination with NDOT.
Okay.
For the visibility concerns.
So NDOT came out, looked at the site with an engineer, I'm assuming, and said, this is what we want you to do?
Correct.
And y'all have done that?
Yes, sir. That's
Okay.
coordinated with Christopher Hare at NDOT.
Okay, that was my question. So you may have something else to say, or other members may have questions for you too.
I mean, we did have a 8-foot fence actually on our plans that were submitted and approved, and we did a 6-foot fence. So it wasn't like we just did this. They were on our plans that we were going to have an 8-foot fence.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, well, thank you. We'll close the public hearing and discuss. Well, I mean, we all know you don't have to get a permit for a fence, and it's not unusual at all for fences people to be unaware of these issues. I think that there is, I'm glad NDOT has addressed the line of sight issues. To me, it is a very unique, the shape of the lot to me is very unique and creates a hardship in my mind.
Yeah, but the issue is the opaqueness versus the non-opaqueness, I think. So, I mean, it creates a hardship, but I mean, you could put a sturdier opaque fence up. You could put something that's, wrought iron or metal of some kind that's firmer, that achieves the purpose and is at the setback line, but doesn't create the situation. I mean, that curve is it is a hairpin turn. I mean, I would hope cars aren't going that fast coming down Centennial and trying to make that super sharp right. But I mean,
well, I'm assuming NDOT has looked at that and they would know better than I would. I mean, the reason I agree, they can make it a chain link fence.
Sure.
Which I don't think people in the neighborhood would probably want. But their issue is that they've got dogs in there, and that you've got this busy street, and they don't want the dogs. They want to have some insulation between the dogs and the street, which makes sense to me.
I mean, I have an opaque fence. It's not right on the street in my yard that locks in an area where my dog wanders around, and it's a pretty busy cut. I don't know. I am struggling to see. I'm struggling to see how the harm to the safety issues, outweigh. I mean,
well, how have the safety issues not been? I mean, I expect NDOT has been out there, and that's their primary concern. And what they've told them is, here's what you gotta do. We're the traffic engineers, we're the experts. Here's what you can do to address the concerns. I don't view it as a case in which NDOT is not adequately provided in their plan for the safety of pedestrians and cars. That's the way I view it. I don't, if NDOT tells me that they're satisfied with it, I'm not a traffic engineer. I haven't done any studying out there, so I think your issue is, well, I think you believe they could get by without an opaque fence. I'm not in the dog business. You know, we have dogs, but I could see why you would want, on a busy intersection like that, you would want an opaque fence if you've got a bunch of dogs in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think where I'm struggling is it, I mean, yeah, they certainly could put a chain link fence up, and that would be the, you know, as of right. But I think I guess the other consideration is they could do what they've done on those portions and keep going with the chain link, you know, further down.
They could. I guess my other thought is, I mean, it's not adjoining any, I understand, we've had people, and nobody understands the fence ordinance.
Right, yeah.
We've had people come in and be upset because in a residential area, somebody put up a non-opaque fence and it's right on the setback line. And I understand that because it becomes an aesthetic thing for residential properties, but that is not an issue here. To me, the safety thing is a legitimate concern, but I'm satisfied that was addressed by NDOT. Ms. Carpenter?
Kind of at a loss on this one. I always tend to side on the side of safety and get NDOT's input, and we have their input. But I think it's unfortunate. It does seem like as a pedestrian, it's dangerous and a sidewalk is needed there, but that's not before us today. But I am struggling with, especially the photos that were shown from the site visit. It just seems very tight in there, but they would be allowed to build at that location with a shorter fence.
Is it intentional that there is not a sidewalk there and that it's on the opposite side of the street for visibility?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the area well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any intention of any kind anywhere with respect to where sidewalks are located or not located, so.
I mean, it'd be a sidewalk to where? On that side of the street?
Well, I mean, I think the issue of whether a sidewalk is present or not, I don't know that, I mean, I don't think that's germane, and I also think that Centennial Boulevard, that corridor's redevelopment has been pretty recent, so I mean, a lot of that's just, you know, it's ahead of where the city is on building sidewalks.
Are you saying the sidewalk could be built but go nowhere, so it wouldn't be
Correct.
needed? Okay. Yeah, I don't know that answer. It just looked unsafe. But again, the sidewalk's not before us, it's the fence. So I don't know.
You're on the fence, okay?
I'm on the fence.
You're on the fence, so to speak. Well, I mean, I think the other thing to consider is looking at it, if they do move it back 10 feet and make it opaque, the way that property is shaped, there's still going to be a whole lot of Centennial that you don't see. I mean, I don't know how many feet it's going to save, but it's still going to, they could legally obscure, looks like to me, 90% of the view from that street that comes in to Centennial. But at any rate, I'll make a motion. I guess we'll see where everybody is on it unless somebody's got anything else to say. I'll make a motion that we approve it with the hardship being the shape of the irregular shape of the lot.
I second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Okay. That doesn't pass. That's 2-2, so you have to have 4 votes. So you will, Mr. Hargis will correct me if I'm wrong. You'll be automatically on the agenda for next meeting. And there are board members out who can watch this via YouTube and then vote on it next time, so. All right.
Yep. That's it.
Thank you
And,
for this case, I believe.
yes, sir. And just to finish up on your train of thought there, if the vote still remains without 4 affirmative votes, that case will be denied by operation of law. All right, Mr. Chairman, our last case of the day is case 2024-243. Ms. Beverly Boswell is the appellant and owner of the property located at 8926 Highway 100. Ms. Boswell is requesting a variance from the street setback requirements in the RS40 district to construct a tiny home with detached carport and utility building referred to the board under section 1740-180, item B. Appellant's present. Ms. Boswell present. All right. And opposition present. Okay, that's those folks. As you've seen in the prior cases, you'll both have 10 minutes to present your testimony. I'll go through my presentation first, but Ms. Boswell, you're welcome to come have a seat. And as soon as I get done, I'll turn it over to you. Let me close Ms. Williams's PowerPoint.
This what I did.
Is it red? Is your button red there, ma'am? You need to push it. It's down on it's down on the flat part of the desk there.
Down here?
Yes, there should be a button down there.
There you go. Ms. Christie will get you
Thank you.
There you go.
Hey, how are you?
help there. All right, Ms. Boswell, I'll go through our presentation first. The subject property, case 243, is at 8926 Highway 100. The subject property is the parcel that's shaped in red there. This is an aerial photograph of the subject property. And then the next map is a map submitted by Ms. Boswell to our office that shows floodplain on the property and floodway. And then the final drawing is what was submitted by Ms. Boswell, showing the location of her proposed home and carport and accessory building that she wishes to put on the extreme eastern portion of the property. And then the next photographs are, I visited the site on the 24th and took pictures along the right-of-way of old Harding Pike, which was old Highway 100. And this is looking at view facing south, looking toward Highway 100 sits up here, kind of in that, just on the other side of that tree line. And then view into that subject lot. I'll leave that or this or whichever slide Miss Boswell would like for me to show the board. And with that,
Well,
ma'am, I'll turn it over to you.
okay, I'm just gonna start because I don't really know where to start. But I sent a letter to Mr. Spain and he's not here. So may I just read the letter to y'all and then it would kind of explain where I'm at and what I'm doing. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Dear Mr. Spain, I thought it would be helpful to try and give you some condensed explanations other than the neighboring letter I sent you as to how and why being granted these 60 feet of variance is crucial in order to be able to satisfy the RS40 single-family residential zoning. I purchased the .98 acre RS40 lot on 2/15/24. Including the purchase price and closing costs, I now have approximately $66,000 in this lot. I bought this property because of its location and proximity to my daughter and grandchildren, 4 miles, along with it being centrally located to my son's employment. I also have future plans of moving to Nashville. Therefore, I have a present and future purpose and reason for wanting to build on this property and location. The person from whom I purchased the property gave me a type of survey showing a professional sketch of a barn dominium and its location on the lot in which he had planned to build. I knew there was a flood zone, but I know people that live in flood zones who take out flood insurance. I was told by the title company that a 2 or 3 bedroom and 2 bath home could be built and maybe even a duplex. I never imagined a .98 acre lot zoned RS40 could or would have no buildable space because of flood overlays, especially after seeing the sketch of the barn dominium along with what the title company told me. I was also told that an RV could be parked on the lot while I was building, only later to find out this was a violation because I must have a permanent structure first. The big problem was finding enough space that met code in which to build. Finally, with the help of a certified floodplain manager and an off-the-record and non-compensated surveyor, a small area was located and accessible without infringing on a flood zone or flood overlay. It meets the minimum requirement of 50 feet necessary to build the tiny 1-bedroom, 1-bath with a matching storage building with a single detached carport by each. However, I discovered through codes that this is buildable space of 50 feet on my .98 acre lot has a 60 feet setback variance. Therefore, I'm requesting all 60 feet be granted to me because this is the only possibility of my being able to utilize the RS40 single-family residence zoning as is intended and as I was told and shown and sold. I would appreciate your support in this most important matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
And I do have the survey that I was given showing the barn dominium and where it was located that I thought I'd be able to build. But then upon checking with Mr. Bowman, he said, no, that couldn't be built there. And
Because of the floodplain.
because of the flood overlays and plains and on we go that I didn't know that was there.
So the only buildable portion of this lot is the very tip of that triangle, and that's why you want to put a tiny house.
And the variance is on that area. It is there, you know.
Well, there's a 40-foot setback required. It looks like from your.
There's 40 from, my understanding is 20 from one side and 40 from another, that there's a total of 60.
Right, and it looks like you're crunched way back in the corner there where you really don't have much of
right, where I have the drawing is where I would have to build.
Right, and that's almost right on the property line.
Because what my goal had been to have 2 and a garage between, and I don't have enough space. So I'm just trying to do the best I can, and I have a sketch. I mean, I have a photo of the single. It's nice looking of the tiny home and the matching storage, and I'm going to fence attaching them, so it'll be very nice looking. But this is. My goal is to have a residence with what I'm dealing with. Without having a piece of property I can do nothing with.
So the goal is to have the tiny house, and the tiny house has a front porch, and then there's another structure.
Yes, would you like to see a photo of what I'm going to do? Now, this is just rough, and this would be the house, and then I'm going to have lattice work around this. And then also, this roof would be matching that. It's not going to be red. And then this would match that for the storage. And this would sit in the back, and then between the two would be a white picket fence adjoining them.
And so you want a tiny house with a front porch, and then you'd have a utility building with a carport, basically.
It's really gonna it's gonna be a drop carport, and the side facing the road would be down, so the cars wouldn't show, the vehicles wouldn't show to the road. It all would be very attractive.
But there'll only be one residence on site.
Oh,
The rest
yeah,
are accessory.
definitely.
Okay. The other is accessory.
Definitely.
Any more questions for that? Okay, thank you, ma'am. We'll close it. We're going to hear from the opposition. You have over 6 minutes left to speak again if you would like.
Thank y'all. Did y'all see this, or did you want to see it? The barnuminium, where I was told
that was what you were going to build?
Yeah, professional, and I was told it could be put there, and I had no idea. So,
All right, we'll hear from those parties in opposition if you want to. I've got 4 seats up here. Feel free to come forward if there's 4 of you. Again, just a reminder, you saw the prior case. You sat through that other case with opposition. So you guys will have 10 minutes in total to divide your time. Be sure to, we'll leave that to you. But again, the clock will run during your testimony. It'll stop for any questions and answers. Introduction of yourself. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kim Higdon. Address is 8290 Linton Lane, Nashville, 37221. First of all, I would like to say that not everyone in the neighborhood received proper notification of this variance. It wasn't until Jason Spain sent an email to a couple of us giving us more information. The variance claims that there's a hardship due to flooding zone, but that's a self-imposed hardship. They had access to the flood overlays when they bought the land, and Metro shouldn't have to exempt satisfied street backs because of that. They didn't say how far back the carport structures would be from the Linton Lane, which should be considered before granting variance to do whatever they want. So it's very unclear, this whole variance with the tiny home. What does that disclose? Is that a DADU, meaning that it's a detached accessory dwelling unit? If that is the case, then the codes of 171240 clearly states that it needs to be located behind an existing home.
Can you say that the code requires that this tiny house be located behind an existing home?
That's right. That's right. So there is no existing home there. And then besides, this is a very drastic difference of what the surrounding homes are in that area. I'm kind of disturbed that the pictures that were shown to you is not showing the homes around it. It is clearly a drastic difference, and therefore it's adversely affects the value of the neighborhood. And also where it's positioned, that they're putting it right at that, where both roads are coming in. People come flying off of Highway 100. I mean, even myself, because we don't want to be, there's traffic behind us, so we're being pushed. And as you're coming off of Highway 100, that could cause a safety hazard. And the resident that has been there living in a trailer, breaking the codes, has continuously parked his car on the street. And therefore, that makes it very difficult for the neighbors to come out And just think about emergency trucks. If anything needs to get, emergency vehicle needs to get up into those homes, it's impossible because the road is so narrow and he continuously parks his car on the side of the street. And from day one, codes have been broken. They've had 2 trailers in there, so what is going to guarantee us that they are going to stay to the accordance to the codes now even?
Good afternoon, I'm Sean Harris, the owner of 8218 Old Harding Pike, Nashville 37221. I agree with Kim. The hardship that we'll talk about here is self-imposed. I also researched that same lot when I built my house, the one that you see on the large piece of land just straight across the road from the property in question. Self-imposed to me because I took a look at this lot, spoke with the previous owner, Clifton Burton, before it was sold to Matthew Marchall. Understood from him that the reason he was selling the lot is because he could not build on it. I looked at the lot, identified the fact that it cannot be built on because of the floodplain, because of the fact that Clifton couldn't get it percolated for septic. Looked at all of these different things. For somebody to say, I've had no knowledge of this and I bought this from somebody who sold me the bill of goods, I think it's a little bit disingenuous. Further to this, it was sold to Mr. Marchall in January, sold then to Ms. Boswell in February. Inside that month, she's making the case the fact that somebody had surveyed it, built a plan, developed that plan, then put it on the market and sold it to her inside that 30 days. I believe that there's some missing information in this regard as well. As Kim had mentioned, they're building in the smallest portion of this lot. At the point where they're looking to build this, the lot is 40 feet wide. The buildings that they're looking to construct represent about 28 feet. We're not talking about a variance, we're talking about a complete elimination of setback. The 40-foot minimum off 2 different roads. And then when you think about the RS40 regulations, talking about where houses should be based on the average of the other houses, if you look across the Linton Lane there, you'll see my house, which is set back 300 feet. My neighbor beside me, who's now built their home there, it's not shown on this graph, also 300 feet. The averages and the building standards have materially changed in this area. We talk about the fact that the applicant is saying she wants to build a tiny house. In a memorandum dated October 9th, 2017, in accordance with Tennessee Code 55-1-105, a tiny house is considered a portable modular unit, mobile home used for human habitation. As Kim mentioned, these structures are meant to be built behind an existing home. Okay? There's no room there to that. So now what we're looking at is the responsibility of the board then, to provide her the variance that says you can build whatever it is that you want and do material harm to the multi-million-dollar homes that have been built across the street and the generational home owners that have existed on Old Harding Pike, now Linton Lane, for 50 years plus. So I urge you to vote against the variance, as there is no hardship other than what was self-imposed by those that bought that property by not doing their own due diligence in this regard. The owner has not been available to address the multiple concerns that have been raised to Metro codes throughout the entire process of trying to remove the mobile homes. Again, as I built my lot, we wanted to build in a mobile home. We did our research. We found out that Davidson County does not allow for a mobile home to be built there. Since February 2024, there had been a mobile home there, which was miraculously moved every time codes was coming out to take their pictures and take a look. Okay? This is now a situation where we're intentionally trying to circumvent the rules and the regulations, and any decision other than to decline the variance at this point will do material harm to the values for those that have lived in this area for the last 50 years.
Good afternoon, Cameron Gady, 8287 Linton Lane, formerly Old Harding Pike. And yeah, just to agree with the first two speakers, my concern is about maintaining the continuity of the neighborhood. In this neighborhood, it's zoned R40. The zoning is there for larger lots and larger homes to create less dense spaces. I think allowing a setback variance on a new build for a tiny home would not only decrease the safety of that particular area, but would disrupt the character of the existing and neighboring properties. I also worry that granting this variance would go against, would actually lead to being able to have a waterfall effect, and in the future allow subsequent variances on the road. And the road just does not support that. So I would ask that you vote against it for the safety and continuity of the neighborhood.
My name is Misty Emery. I live at 8276 Old Harding, now Linton Lane, which is at the other end of the street. I agree with everything my neighbors have said. That lot's been a problem for a while. It's changed hands a lot. I'm not really sure how people can continue to sell this lot when it's clear that it is not fit to be built on because of the floodplain and various other issues. I feel bad for anyone who does buy it, but ultimately it is up to the buyer to evaluate the property and find out what they can do with it before they buy it. The other thing is, as my neighbors mentioned, someone's been living there in a trailer for most of this year. There have been multiple codes violations reported about this property, and they all magically kind of go away. One of them is a fence. 6 large panels that are approximately 5 by 7 apiece have been built along one side of the property. The rules state that even if you have it at the 10-foot mark, it's only supposed to be 30 feet high, and they're 2 feet taller than I am, and been painted weird colors, painted red and whatnot. And that got dismissed. I don't understand why all these violations are getting dismissed. And so I feel like if you approve this, I mean, they've basically shown that they don't want to follow the rules at this point. And so if you grant the variance, you're just saying to them clearly, you don't have to follow the rules. And you know what assurance is this to the neighbors that they're going to take care of that property? Because they haven't to this point. We have lots of photos showing the state of disrepair that this lot is in. It's not been cleared properly. There are tons of down trees. I mean, they've really trashed the property. And, you know, it's an unfortunate situation, but it is really incumbent upon them to follow the rules.
Yes, we do have pictures. Would you like to see them? Yes. Because you showed them during the hearing, we need to see them. Thank you. I'll take them all and pass them down.
Okay, so those are the trailers that they have parked down there, and then that also the fence that.
And they'll have to keep them because they were shown during the hearing. Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, any questions for the opposition? Okay, thank you. We'll hear back from the applicant.
There's one thing that I didn't mention, if I may.
Well, you're out of time. Can you make
Okay.
it pretty quickly? Yeah.
I just want to mention that also, the person that has been living at that property, in addition to the codes violations, there have been several police reports filed because this person has tried to intimidate the neighbors. You know, there's records of all of this.
That's really not something we would even consider in considering whether there's a variance should be granted, ma'am.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing?
Sir, if you're speaking in opposition, the opposition's out of time, so.
I'm in opposition. I've been there 84 years. I own the property adjacent.
Okay.
There's nothing at all been brought up here. That old property.
Sir, if you're gonna talk, we need to make sure, let me ask the board if we could give you a minute, but you're gonna need to step up and give your name, and we're gonna give additional time to that.
There was an old service station there, and there's no.
Okay, sir, if you'll just hold on a second. Do we want to give this gentleman additional time to speak? Okay, we don't, so thank you very much, but we're going to hear from the opposition at this point, from the applicant. Ma'am, you have some time left if you want to come up and address.
6 minutes, 50 seconds, and I'll be sure to pass those photographs back to
if it's red, it's on, if it's, yeah.
On the left, right side.
The right side, when it's red, it's on. Okay. May I see those photos?
Sure, we'll pass those over to you.
Pardon?
Yes, ma'am, I'll pass it to you. Go ahead. Real quick.
Okay, I'm aware of some of the things they said. That was my son there, and this man that was sitting here, I'm not sure, the one with one of the large homes across from us. I need my phone. Can I have my phone? I have some photos of houses that are within 1,000 feet. That's what I had to send letters to, and they're not all as described.
Well, let me just say this, ma'am. I don't think, I think I speak for the board when whatever's been going on out there.
Well, I mean, they're saying it's not keeping with the neighborhood. There are many homes within 1,000 feet of my lot that are not very presentable homes.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's relevant.
Do you want to see photos of them?
That's something relevant. I thought you were going to talk about the allegations about the codes.
No. What he was saying is I was telling untruths, but this Mark Hilton never told me that nothing could be built, and I was given plans showing barnuminium. Maybe you can call me stupid, but I was not telling a story or a lie. And I'm sorry that, and you know, I don't like being told that I should know all of this when I.
Yeah, well, however this turns out, I believe that you bought this not realizing.
And what I'm asking for is not, it would look better than much that's in there. I'm sorry, it won't look like $1 million home, but it will look nice. But my phone is not in here, it's in that other. But anyway, what I wanted to say is that, I don't know what those photos look like now, but, this fence doesn't look like this anymore. It's completely built out and it's painted. The trailer is no longer there, and the property is cleaned up. None of this is anymore. This was all in violation, and this was my son, and I did not approve of it, and it's not like that anymore. And I'm not complaining, but the neighbors weren't very nice either. And I understand they weren't happy, and neither was I. The lot is now vacant, and I do apologize. But all I can say is I need the 60 feet in order for my RS-40 lot to be able, what I bought, to be able to have a residence. And it's not going to hurt any of the neighbors, and it's not going to devaluate anything. Nothing, because it's going to look nice.
Okay.
And I appreciate it if y'all would do this. And that's all I know to say.
Okay.
Thank
Let
you.
me see if anybody has any questions. Any questions? Yeah, Ms. Carpenter has one.
I don't have a question, but
Go
a
ahead.
statement. It's really hard to understand what the ask is here because the sketch doesn't show. I'm an architect by trade, and so I do better when things are in a solid plan, but not a sketch. So we can actually see what the ask is. From the sketch, I can't tell what
Do you see where?
Well, just let me keep going. It says 40 feet setback is required. I don't know where the 40 feet is on this sketch. I don't know what you're asking for. Are you asking for it to be 20 feet from the road? I don't know. So with this information, I'm just telling everyone it's going to be hard for me to vote in approval of anything, no matter what happens here. So I wanted you to know that this would be really hard. I really don't understand what's being requested.
What is?
It's just the entire, it's not really difficult to understand. The area needs the setback because.
But we don't know. What we can't tell is how much of a setback do you need? It looks to us like at least the back building is pretty much right on the property line, and it looks like the front one is. We can't tell. I mean, that's what Ms. Carpenter is saying is whether it's 20 feet or
it's
off
50
the property
feet.
line.
It takes 50 feet for this, and it's 60 feet in setback. It's 40 from 100, and it's 20 feet from the other street.
What's the total depth or width of that property? From edge to edge? Because so setbacks are obviously calculated, and then you're left with a portion there in the middle. And so what we're trying to figure out is what, the size of the structure, the size of what this is, and then, how long, essentially, what it would be as compared to with what the setback is required.
Yeah, and I think where we are with this right now, ma'am, is I don't think you're going to have a chance of obtaining a variance without some type of site plan.
Without what now?
Without some type of site plan that tells us precisely how much of a setback you're looking for. So, and I think probably we're going to want to defer this because we can't tell whether you're asking for 20 feet or 15 feet or 30. That's what Ms. Carter.
I'm asking for 60 feet. I'm asking for the whole 60 feet of setbacks, what I'm asking for, because it's taking 50 feet to build the structure.
What's the proposed square footage of the house?
I think the proposed square footage, I think, is around 500 square feet.
Okay.
Well, here's what I understand, that there's a required 40-foot setback from both of these property lines. That's what I understand to be the code at issue here. What we're saying is
I think it's 20 from one and 40 from the other, but go ahead.
Okay, 20 from one, 40 from the other. We can't tell, it looks to me like the back building is maybe right on the property line, maybe 5 feet from the property line.
Mm-hmm.
It might benefit you if we know if this is not to scale and that's actually 15 feet, then that might help you. So I don't think we're going to be able to do anything here without a site plan. You can have a surveyor prepare a site plan for you that we can use. So I'm going to suggest that we defer this and let you come back with a site plan.
Yeah, that sort of identifies it, because I think, part of what we have to consider is factors that regarding the sort of buildable shape of the lot. And there are certainly things here that operate in favor of a potential variance, but it's really hard to assess it with the informal drawing here. And so something that with more detail demonstrates or indicates what the proposal is.
So you need tell me what you need, a site
plan that shows exactly how much where the buildings will be located in relation to the property line. And if you have a surveyor do that, they can prepare it where we can see the distance in terms of the feet. And if they do the job we really like them to do, it'll show where the setback line is and where the buildings are in relation to the setback line. That's very helpful when we're looking at.
And it ought to include the sort of the floodplain information as well. So it'll package all that together. But I think it's going to help us, and it can only help you.
And this would just be a surveyor or a special kind of surveyor to do this?
The barn dominium drawings you showed looked like it was a formal site plan on there. Looked like there was a survey done. So I would start with the barn dominium drawings. That looked to be, from what I could see, the proper type of site plan we're looking for.
Okay.
It has topography, probably setbacks, most likely. I would suggest go talk to the zoning examiner down at Codes. They can tell you whether or not what you need for the site plan.
Right, and if you can locate on within your property where the unbuildable floodplain, floodway areas are, that would be helpful too, because that would prove to us or disprove that where you can or cannot build. And you've submitted something here, but it's still, we don't have any concept of where the building is in relation to where the floodway or floodplain starts.
I will ask the question of the zoning, because that was actually
The only
something
reason I
need to
came
ask.
before you all with this is because zoning had told me a tiny home could go in. I would not have come if I'd have known a tiny home could not go there.
I don't think there's the zoning issue here is not whether you can or cannot have a tiny home. The zoning issue is, can you comply with a setback?
Right, well, according to what she was saying earlier, is that you had to have,
That's not accurate. The
Okay.
issue here is whether you whether you meet the setback requirements.
okay,
I do
Okay.
think they could benefit from an education on what the DADU is, and I think that would just benefit the next
Yeah,
hearing.
the formal concept of a tiny
What
home
the-
versus
yeah, I don't-
home that is small.
I don't believe there's a tiny home
There,
provision.
there is no
in the
definition in the
code,
zoning
so-
code. Yeah, there's no definition in the zoning code about a tiny home, but when these first started making their appearance around, our building and fire codes do permit people to build these and use them as residential homes. You do have state statutes that define what they are. But Davidson County, the codes we've adopted, you can construct a tiny home and use it as a residence. And there are certain building and fire code requirements required by those, depending on whether they're manufactured somewhere and trucked on site and all the wiring and plumbing's done at the factory. That's akin to a single wide trailer where the state inspects those at the factory. But you can build something that size in Davidson County now.
And can you let them know that the DADU provision of the code does not apply here?
Yeah, DADU is not a tiny home. Those are not the same thing. The zoning code allows in some zone districts you to have a second residential structure on your lot, which is called a DADU, that meets the requirements. I think one of the opposition was talking about has certain standards. That's not a tiny home. Tiny homes are full residential homes, just like any other stick-built or double-wide or that sort of thing. So there's different regulations. They are homes, but there's land use regulations tied to those. That's not what this applicant's proposing to build. She's proposing to build a tiny home, as she's
Did
described.
we pick a date for the deferral?
No, I was thinking we probably need to defer it 2 meetings because if she's going to need to get a site plan done, I just don't know that 30 days is going to be enough, so.
Can I make it the first of the year?
Sure.
When is our January meeting?
Our January meeting is January the 6th.
Okay, so we'll.
That's a Monday, I think, isn't it?
Oh, then the 8th. The first Thursday of January.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we defer this until January 6th.
No, excuse me, that's January 2nd.
January 2nd? Okay.
January 2nd?
So it'll be deferred until, or I'm moving that it be deferred until January 2nd.
Okay.
All right, there's a motion, a second. All in favor? That passes, so
Okay.
it'll be deferred until January 2nd. I think you understand what the board is asking for.
Okay, so I'll need to have that survey and that kind of thing, okay?
What we talked about, yes.
Okay, if I
Okay,
can.
thank you all.
Thank you very much.
And with that, the board is adjourned for the day.
All right,
Let me
thank you.
turn this
Great.
on.
I probably should have spoken earlier.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.